All right. Well, I want to start this episode with a shout out, non-football related, but my cousin Alexa Vasco, who was drafted to the Toronto team. They don't all have nicknames yet, but the Toronto team for the Professional Women's Hockey League, the inaugural Professional Women's Hockey League, and they just had their first game yesterday. They did lose, unfortunately. Toronto did, but she made her professional debut in hockey.
That's awesome.
That was pretty badass.
And it's just
really cool.
The Toronto, are they the Toronto Oak Leaves? Or the Toronto, Maple Leaves? What's another? The Toronto Ash Leaves? Like, what are the other types of oak trees?
Yeah, right now the whole league is designating its teams based on location. So it's all Toronto of the PWHL, and so they played New York, and then there was Montreal versus Ottawa and all
They're
that.
just repping the cities right now.
Yeah.
How many cities? What other cities are in it?
Yeah, so there's Boston, New York, Minnesota, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, and that is it. So it looks like those.
There's no Chicago team, so I guess I'm a fan of Toronto.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to get yourself a Vasco. You got to get yourself a Vasco jersey.
I know. I got to get a jersey. Absolutely. No, it's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome. She's worked super hard. She was a powerhouse in college, and now she gets her shot in the
Where'd
pros,
she play college hockey?
Super neat. She played at Mercyhurst. It's a college in Pennsylvania, and they're a really good hockey school. So, go figure. But yeah, she was the blood of all conference and all of that. Yeah,
the blood of Elmer Moose.
Exactly.
Runs,
continuing on the tradition there. And from the same hometown as well. So shout out big time. That's cool
really cool.
But obviously we had a lot of football being played this past weekend, especially yesterday for the new year. We had the 2 college football games. So we'll start our episode talking about those 2 games, and then obviously get into the craziness that was week 17 in the NFL as we pour over the playoff landscape. There's 3,000 different scenarios that could play out this next upcoming weekend. So needless to say, we're not going to be going over each and every scenario for the playoffs, but there's obviously something riding on every single game this upcoming weekend. So should be exciting. But yeah, the big headline, of course, as we get ready and launch ourselves into the show is we have our 2-1 seeds, the San Francisco 49ers, Baltimore Ravens, cleaning house, having convincing wins, putting themselves in the driver's seat as we get ready for postseason play. All right. So, yeah, we've got those 2 teams locking up home field advantage, as well as that first round bye, the highly coveted first round bye. So San Fran and Baltimore expected to sit plenty of their starters this upcoming week as they get ready, which is interesting because, they'll be sitting their starters. Sometimes you see people sitting their starters when they have the 2 seed locked up or the 3 seed. Yeah, they're going to have 2 weeks off, really 3 weeks before game time. So there's always that conversation of rust, but probably the right decision. Don't want to get your star players hurt in a relatively meaningless game, but a lot to get to, of course. But Mark, first we have a Michigan versus Washington national championship.
All Big Ten championship.
That's right. It's going to be a very interesting conference next year. And I think, I don't know what your thoughts are on it. I mean, of course, both of us grew up, Big Ten fans, primarily because we lived in that, part of the country, and, not beholden to any one particular team. So it's fun to watch the conference, but they very well might be the top conference come next year, overriding the SEC, depending on what happens. But your thoughts on how these 2 games played out?
Well, I think the problem with the Big Ten versus the SEC will always be, I do think you can make the argument right now, the top of the Big Ten is better than the top of the SEC. The problem
That's probably been the case for a while, too.
The problem is like the 4th and 5th best team. Well, now if you add in Oregon and Washington, right, because you have Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Washington. The problem is when you get to like that 5th through 8th parts of the Big Ten versus the 5th of the 8th through the SEC, I would take the SEC over the Big Ten. And you saw it with Iowa can't move the ball, and they're the 4th best. You know what I mean? So the 4th best, 5th best, 6th best, 7th best team in the SEC would beat those versions of the Big Ten. But I do believe the bottom of the SEC is not as good as the bottom of the Big Ten anymore either. So I think it's a fun thing to think about. I just love how the styles of both conferences are very different at the heart of them. And even though you add in the flash of an Oregon and the offense of a USC, it doesn't change the Big Ten mainly being built out of schools like Nebraska and Iowa and Minnesota and Wisconsin that literally cannot get first downs. It's just hysterical. Yeah. I will say this. I think the conversation really needs to start is, could Michigan beat Carolina? Could Michigan beat the Carolina Panthers? And how many drinks would David Tepper throw on Michigan fans in that game? Those are, I mean, to me, that's
the over-unders. Yeah,
the over-under is at least 2 drinks on that. And so I know we'll get into that here shortly, but it was a great games yesterday. I thought Michigan, Alabama was an all-timer at the Rose Bowl, the best setting in college football, and the sun setting at Pasadena, the Rose Parade, and those colors, those uniforms, those brands, it just everything worked. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was cool.
And it was ugly. I mean, there were times when there was just like bad football, but that's what you love about college. And then in the other game, it was Washington was like, it felt like, I mean, there was back and forth, but Washington, like late in that game, you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, they might actually lose this game. Texas is finding a way.
I know. Washington felt in control. Like, I felt like they were dominating for a good portion of it, but yet they did almost let it slip. I mean, that could have been, if they don't muff that punt.
Oh, I know.
They could have won by probably
easily
15.
And Michael Penix Jr. proved to me, he showed he was by far the best quarterback of the 4 teams.
Is he a first-round quarterback next year?
I think at this point in time, yeah, I absolutely think so. I think there's an argument to be made. There is going to be at least 4 first-rounders this year. I really believe that. I think when you look at Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, Drake May, Caleb Williams, those to me are first rounders. Then Bo Nix will be the.
Bo Nix will be the.
All right, does someone want to take a stab at Bo Nix? But depending on how Penix plays, if he plays well against a Michigan defense, yeah, it's gonna be something we're gonna talk a lot about here in coming weeks. So I know we don't want to waste any more time on it, but can't wait for Michigan and Washington. It's gonna be a really great game on Monday and on the 8th.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good matchup. So I would anticipate a pretty close game.
I take Michigan right now. Michigan should be favored. Their trenches
they deserve that.
Their offensive and defensive lines are just nasty. And what Texas ended up being a bad matchup for Washington in the sense that I didn't think through it. Washington has 2 receivers that are going to be first-round picks, and they have maybe 3 that could be that. And the back end of Texas is safeties and corners the weakness for Texas football right now, and they just got exploited.
Yeah. Penix took over, and those receivers didn't drop any passes at all. It was like
it was
they
crazy.
were just falling in everything.
Also, you can't touch Penix. Like I know. He's only been sacked 11 times this year. In college, that is insane. I think Caleb Williams
won a game.
Caleb Williams was sacked something like over 40 times this year. Like, it is crazy. That's crazy. So if Michigan can get at Penix, then it'll throw off his game. It'll throw off Washington as a whole. I think that's how you win if you're Michigan looking at the game. You got to get at Penix.
I don't want to push this too far down, but the thought just came to me, and I just have to ask the question because you mentioned Iowa and how just atrocious that all is. I've been pondering this and I can't come up with an answer. Maybe you can help me out here. I cannot figure out. Iowa, I get it. Like location wise, the Big Ten has a problem. They can't. Who wants to go play at Minnesota? Who wants to go play in Iowa City when they can go play? And a lot of the states
climate. In the Big Ten are losing population. Like literally, like that. It is the Midwest is struggling right now.
That's a problem. But I can't figure out is how it just has never happened, at least in the last 30 years or so, where an Iowa team that continuously produces plenty of NFL talent. On the offensive and defensive lines, always dudes, linebackers, all of that. How all they needed was just one quarterback in the last 30 years who's yes, I'm a 4 or 5 star recruit, and yes, I could go to Ohio State, but I risk going to be the 3rd string quarterback and having to transfer here, transfer there. Why not go to Iowa? They're going to have a great line, a great defensive line, solid coach, fairly easy competition relative to other conferences. It just seems like if Iowa had a really good quarterback, they would be a national championship level team any year.
They
And I don't get why that's not enticing enough to an
it's the same.
18-year-old kid.
It's the same question that Wisconsin asked themselves. And then, I mean, look, like 3 years ago,
Fair.
they got that Graham Mertz kid who was like a 5-star, and he flamed out and ended up having a terrible season in Florida this year after the transfer portal. I think
and they
a
got
lot
Russell
of it,
Wilson there, and
they had. I mean, that was it. I mean, but again, they had to transfer in. Much of it is just the culture. I mean, it's just the culture. The answer is they listen. Michigan tried to do that with Rich Rod. Remember that in the early 2000s, and like, let's bring the West Virginia. Let's try to go. So much of it's just the culture of what these programs are. It's why the Bears can't find a good quarterback. I think there's a lot of it's institutional. Yeah, but I agree. Yep. Iowa has the bodies on the offensive and defensive line to hang with the best teams from the SEC and the best teams in the Big Ten, but they've never had consistently the speed and the quarterback to do it. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's rough sledding for them. All right, let's get to the NFL, what you're all here for as we get ready for Week 18 and the final week of the regular season and push ourselves to the playoffs. So right now, we talked about the landscape last week. Now we have a couple other solidified playoff spots. So right now in the AFC, we have the Baltimore Ravens clinching that 1 seed. We have the Dolphins, the Chiefs, and the Browns all clinching a playoff spot.
Yeah.
So 4 spots clinched in the AFC. In the NFC, we have the 49ers in the 1 seed, and then we have the Cowboys now leading the NFC East. Then we have the Lions, the Eagles, and the Rams, your Los Angeles Rams, putting themselves in a playoff spot. So only 2 up for grabs in the NFC, 5 up for grabs total in the league. So very interesting. If the playoffs started today, we'd have the Jags, Bills, and Colts. And we'd have the Buccaneers and the Packers rounding out the NFL playoffs here. But of course, a lot riding on Week 18 here, and we'll see. There's going to be a lot of shifting for sure.
Definitely, I think we jump into this. I think before the one thing I want to say is looking ahead to Week 18. It's again the brilliance of the NFL schedule of this kind of flex schedule makers. You have these amazing games like a Buffalo and Miami, but you also then look at like okay that also means you're risking it because you have a Jets versus Patriots. You know what I mean? Like, and that game means nothing, and it's for no one. So by doing this, the NFL has basically guaranteed themselves that they're going to have at least half of the games be meaningful, and then a quarter of the games have at least to be meaningful for one team, and then there's probably going to be about a quarter of the games that just mean nothing. And it's totally, when you began the season, you think, oh my God, Aaron Rodgers, Week 18. Mac Jones, scrappy Patriots team, that could be for a wild card spot, and it just happens that it's for nothing. So it's a great risk reward thing they've done, and it leaves a lot of things open, and so there is intrigue. And I do think though the big question will be like, how much do you see from certain teams that have things completely locked up? The Lions, unfortunately for them. You know what I mean? Like we'll start with them. I know that game. Like, I don't believe the NFL's rigged, but they got screwed out of a 1 seed. The NFL, I mean, they locked up the Cowboys, but they screwed themselves out of the drama of the Niners Rams game really meaning something for the Niners. Now it doesn't. They're locked in. So there's a lot that came of last weekend. So we got to try to unpack it all.
Yeah, so with that Lions Cowboys game, it was back and forth. It was definitely a defensive battle for the most part. Like the offenses were moving the ball, but they were getting stalled at midfield or just outside of the red zone there. And so it was a game of field position, a game of back and forth battling there. CeeDee Lamb, had a what was it, a 92-yard
heck of a
touchdown. And, it was just a fantastic game yet again on his part, but. It just really came down to, both teams jockeying for position at the end of the game. The Lions get the ball with a chance to, tie the game. They get the touchdown, and Dan Campbell, in predictable fashion, I think even, the announcers were signaling if they get a touchdown here, they're going to go for 2. Like, there's no doubt. They're going to go for the win. They go for the win. They get the touchdown to the offensive tackle, Taylor Decker. And then, the ref fiasco happens where the refs say that, did they officially declare what they believe happened?
No,
I think what they say is that they think 70 declared.
Yes.
that he was eligible. And really, it was 68 that caught the pass that was supposed to be declared as eligible. And then we saw the footage afterwards. 68 did declare, but 70 may have also declared as well. So it was
And listen, there's the thing about it. I don't believe the NFL's rigged. If you've been listening to the show for long enough, you know that I'm not one of those people with the tinfoil hat and all this stuff. This truly felt to me like the first time in my life since, besides maybe that Saints-Rams no call pass interference, it was so blatant that they didn't call the pass interference and the Rams went on to the Super Bowl in New Orleans. They went on to lose to the Patriots. I truly, truly, truly felt to myself, oh, okay, this feels like someone pushed the button, right? The flag came
at
in
the Buffalo
so late.
Wild Wings commercial.
Yes, it really did.
Yeah.
And I'm really shocked by two things this weekend. Number one was that the NFL hasn't more swiftly come out and honestly said, this was wrong. This officiating crew is being, fired or completely demoted. There will be disciplinary action. This was wrong. And then I'm surprised the NFL has not already fined David Tepper multi-millions of dollars and on taking away a draft pick for throwing the drink on it. Now, some people may argue, calm down, dude, he threw a drink. It's not the act, it's the actor that deserves the punishment, right? You had an NFL
you can't
owner,
have a representative of your league like that.
If it was, I don't care if it was, if it was a GM, if it was the president of the team, it'd be the same type. It's worse that it's the owner. It's that bad. And so those are two things I'm really surprised of that here. Maybe it's the holidays that's all coming down this week. Who knows? But here we are recording at 1:28 local Central Time for me on January 2nd, and neither have been levied the way I think they deserve to be. When it comes down to it, the Lions are a better team than Dallas. The Lions did not deserve to really be in that game late at home in Dallas, and yet they were, because Dallas is really awful down the stretch. And Dallas's offense is now becoming very CeeDee Lamb reliant. They cannot run the football consistently, which is bad news for January and February football. And I still think the Lions, are the second best team in the NFC right now, even though they lost that game. They deserve to win that game. They won that game. They fair and square won that game. And I love Dan Campbell going for it, even when it was at the 7, first and goal from the 7 for the 2-point conversion, because that's his conviction. That's his team. That's the way he plays. And when you're the Detroit Lions and you've won nothing in the Super Bowl era, literally nothing, that is how you should be. That is what you should be doing. You should not be playing it safe. And I know it's going to cost them, basically, they're going to almost guarantee have to play the Rams in the first round, and it will be heartbreaking if the Rams and Matt Stafford go in there and upset the Lions. It will destroy the Lions, but it's not their fault. They deserve to be playing for the 1 seed this weekend, and the Rams deserve to be playing against the Niners team to knock them off from the 1 seed. And we got robbed of that because of a horrible, horrible officiating crew.
I think a lot of people are going to be Washington Commanders fans next week and hoping that they just knock off the Dallas Cowboys, and then the Lions cruise to a victory against Minnesota and get themselves the 2 seed and a little bit of redemption in that regard. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But yes, the Lions deserve to win that game.
The problem is that you also need Philly to lose to New York, because now Philly's strength of schedule, the tiebreakers don't work as well. The Lions are basically locked into the 3 seed unless both the Giants and Commanders win, which they're in full tank mode.
Well, no, because if the Cowboys lose and go to 11-6 and the Eagles win, the Eagles then, you're right. They'll jump to the 2 seed. So they would need both those teams to lose. Not as likely, certainly. Well, that's a rough situation, but nonetheless, they'll be able to host a game and potentially 2, into the playoffs. But that was rough. That was rough for sure. And as a consolation prize, that officiating crew has now been assigned to the Steelers-Ravens game. So lucky Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that has no meaning.
They get to have that group there for Saturday's game. But the only punishment we've heard in regards to this is that they will not be
Playoff.
officiating a playoff game this upcoming season. So a little bit of a consequence there for that crew. But moving forward to the Sunday slate of games, the Patriots at the Bills. Patriots were, jumped out early with that, kick return touchdown.
Yeah.
Looked like maybe the Patriots are going to pull off an upset and give Bill Belichick his fifth win of the season. But the Bills do pull this one out in the end, 27-21. I obviously the Bills needed it to put themselves in an even better position. They are, currently in a playoff spot in the 6th seed. But at the same time, it didn't make me feel much better about the Bills, to be honest. I mean, yes,
No.
they won. Yes, it's a more difficult matchup than maybe it looks on paper with the Patriots being a 4-win team. All that being said, if you're the Bills and you're in that situation, I would have expected a much more convincing victory.
Yeah.
And still they had to claw their way to get a win. I mean, personally, and I know the Dolphins have struggled too, and we'll get to that later. But personally, I feel like the Bills are in a backs against the wall type of situation for this upcoming week against the Dolphins, just because of how they've been playing recently. Their only bit of fortune is that Miami has also been stumbling a bit as of late.
Listen, the Bills, what did I say on Friday's show? I said they're just a win is a win game. Like, they just got to get a win, right? And they did. So I don't want to overreact because of I'm going back to what I thought last week going into that game. And the reason I said it, and I'm sticking with it now, is that everything for them just really comes down to the fact that their ceiling on this season is making sure they get the division. They, you know what I mean, and have a chance, to put themselves in a real spot. So they've been in playoff mode for the last 4 weeks, and they put themselves in a position here now to do what everything that's still their goals are in front of them, right? Win the AFC East, host some playoff games, and try to go on a run here. So, yes, it was ugly. Is my faith in them dwindled a bit? Sure. But look at the last 2 weeks. They had to face a Chargers team that was 100% fired up, getting the interim coach bump on the road against the Chargers team that literally was like, let's quit so they can fire this guy, and then we'll come and ball out for our jobs. They hung on after being down 13-0 to that team and came back and won. And then against a New England team and the greatest coach in NFL history that has owned this team in their lifetimes, they found a way to win a sloppy game against a team that has dominated them historically with the greatest coach in NFL history. So I agree. It's not the way you want to see the Bills play if you're a Bills fan. But what did I say on Friday? They're in a win is a win game just to get the win. So you can set yourself up for Sunday night. And they did that. And I think all bets are off. All history's lost. Sunday night is all cards on the table. It's the season for both of these teams. Now, Miami's in no matter what, but this will feel like a gigantic disappointment if you're the Dolphins and you still we're in the playoffs still, even though if we lose to Buffalo. It will be devastating. And for Buffalo, they will be riding into the playoffs with so much momentum and so much house money if they find a way to pull it off. So, I'm with you. My gut says the confidence has waned a little bit in the Bills, but overall, they've still done exactly what they needed to do to get themselves to where everything is still in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, considering how rocky the season's been for them, the fact that they're in this position right now in a playoff
crazy
spot as we stand here today, is at least in some regards, impressive, or at least they've turned things around to some extent. Your Chicago Bears have turned things around. They started 2-7 this season, and they are since 5-2 and 7-9.
I know it's not the
season. Yeah, seriously. I know for you, it's not been the season that Bears fans want, and I know it's not been the season that Justin Fields has wanted to have, or that Matt Eberflus wanted to have for his job security.
Yeah.
But there is something to be said for him and the way he's cultivated the defense. There's something to be said for Justin and the way that he's kind of rallied the troops around him. They're 7-9. They might be 8-9 when the season's all done, which sounds incredible after an 0-4 start to the year. And on the flip side of this game, they beat the Dolphins or the Falcons by 20. And Atlanta now, when earlier in the year seemed to be moving ahead of the New Orleans Saints for the division, then it was the Bucs kind of taking over. The Falcons have just fallen.
Yeah.
And now they're in a position where they would need a considerable amount of help next week to be able to make the playoffs, but they still can get there. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. But this to me said more about the Bears making a statement, even
Yeah.
though the season's lost. 20-point victory. You had to be pleased with what you saw out there.
Yeah, the Falcons, listen, the Falcons are literally the best example you can watch when you watch a football game and just go, they don't have a quarterback. If they had a quarterback, this team would be really frisky, really fun. And so, I mean, that's all we have to say about Atlanta, right? Their job is to figure out the quarterback position, whether it's a veteran in Kirk Cousins trying to steal or trade for a Justin Fields or someone else who's, wore out their welcome at their home place, or whether it's being really aggressive in the draft and going to get a quarterback. That is what Atlanta needs to do. It's as simple as that. And I would argue, if I was Atlanta, losing this game in Week 18 is the best thing for you, again, in the sense that it helps your draft pick and it opens a lot more things up for you in that sense. Now, for the Bears, I've been consistent with my messaging. I'm a firm believer until I see it that I don't think Matt Eberflus is the type of guy that can consistently win divisions, right? Things have gotten better. The Montez Sweat trade has really been the thing that changed everything for this Bears team. And what has it consistently shown me? It has consistently shown me that when you add good players and you don't let good players go and you don't trade good players, you bring in good players, your team gets better. Like, your team gets better. Like, even Bill Belichick, the greatest coach of NFL history, he doesn't have enough good players right now, and so they're losing. So, yes, coaching matters in the NFL, but players are the most important thing. And if your coach can at least set a culture and be competent on their side of the football, well, then you can win some games. You can be a winning culture. I think Mike Tomlin's a great example of that. He has built overall, with a lot of talent, a consistent winning culture in Pittsburgh. It's not maybe one as much as the expectations are in Pittsburgh, but again, that's then where I would criticize Mike. It's his job to elevate that, right? You have to now find that way to elevate to winning consistently big playoff games. For the Bears, it's literally just about finding a way to get to that point where you have more seasons over a span of a decade over 500 than under 500. And that is something that it's really been hard for them to do in the Super Bowl era consistently. Like a decade where, no, we are more over 500 than under 500. Can Eberflus do that? We'll see. I will say in this game, what I was really impressed by, Luke Getsy actually called under the center play action passes, slants. And what do you know? Justin looked like a really competent, good NFL starting quarterback who occasionally makes really special plays that no one else can make. That's what we as fans have been saying for the last 2 years. If you just run a fun, competent NFL offense with play action, with some designed runs, with some easy, quick slants and reads with good players, the kid can play and this team can be successful. So, yeah, locking up the number one pick was awesome. It's great. It now allows the Bears, every single option is on the table, and it should be. Every single option should be on the table. They should listen to every phone call. They should make every phone call. Ryan Poles should know exactly. He should have 100 different scenarios in front of him, and then he gets to rank what's the best scenario for my team. And if Kevin Warren, his boss above him, he should be doing the same thing. He should be making phone calls and going, is this the guy I want making this decision or not? I think I have, at this point in time, faith in Ryan Poles. I think the organization does too. He's shown you with the DJ Moore trade and with the Montez Sweat trade that more so than often. Also, some of his draft picks, Tevin Jenkins and Tyreek Stevenson, they're really, really hitting. Darnell Wright, really, really hitting. It's like, no, this guy, he should be managing the franchise. So I think the Bears go out and they beat the Packers next week. I think the Bears are ending a season on a really high note. They are a team that has found a way to figuring it out. They started the season poorly, and again, I blame the coaching for that. The offensive game plans in that 0-4 start were terrible. The defense was terrible in that 0-4 start, and that is 100% of the coaching because not much has changed roster-wise. The talent's all still there, right?
Yeah.
And you added Montez Sweat. Is that enough to go from an 0-4 to 8-5 with the last? I don't think he's just what he's not Myles Garrett.
He's not.
He's a
Yeah, he
really
doesn't make
solid
that
player.
big of an impact.
So the coaching has gotten better. But again, so you know how I feel about it. I was very happy with this win. I was really happy with this win. I like to watch my team win games, and I like to watch Justin did everything he can do. And he's not only helping himself stay with the Bears, but he's helping himself find an organization that might actually commit to him long term if it's not the Bears. And so I'm happy for the kid, and I hope he goes and balls out in Green Bay and ends the Packers season on a sour note.
It's a win-win across the board for Justin Fields, I'd imagine, as we get ready for the end of this season, and he stares down year 3 in the NFL. So, or is it year? No, it's year 4. It'll be year 4 next year. Right?
Next year's year 4, which again, there's a luxury. They haven't even picked up the 5th-year option. You have 2 more years of cost control Justin Fields before you have to sign him anything.
That's
and you
so
can always
tempting.
And you can always franchise tag. You can always use the franchise tag on a player like that.
Yep, no doubt. The Colts did a lot to put themselves still in the driver's seat of their own destiny here.
For the Colts.
Big win, 23-20 over Vegas. The Raiders, had an opportunity to win this one and really play spoiler. And this game in particular would have really put the AFC playoff picture in even more flux than it currently is. But the Colts hang on, so they have that 7 seed still in play. And if they beat the Texans next week, they will have a playoff spot. Whether or not what happens in Jacksonville, that is another question entirely for them. But the Colts right now have a shot at the division, but they at least very much have a shot at the playoffs. And so the Colts are starting to get it together again. We mentioned that they've been getting healthier and healthier the last couple of weeks, and that's really helped them a lot, especially with Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor. If you can have Gardner Minshew just go out there and, for lack of a better term, manage the game, then the Colts are a good enough team to be a playoff team and maybe, be a surprise wild card winner. Can't see him winning much past that, but yeah, it was a good win for them. And they really are right now in that conversation, no doubt about it. And if the Jaguars slip up, the Colts or the Texans are going to have an opportunity to snag that division from them.
If I would have told you back in July that we'd be watching the Colts versus the Texans week 18 and the winner is win and in the playoffs with a winning record, we would have both been, I think, just jaw on it. Would be like, you're crazy. That's the boldest prediction of all bleeping time. And to do it without Richardson, with the Colts have done it now while their star quarterback, their high investment, their number 3 pick, has barely played this year. It's been an incredible, incredible coaching job. The reason the Eagles are struggling is the reason the Colts are flourishing. Shane Steichen. I mean, that we now have a new young star head coach in the National Football League, and we have 2 of them, D'Amico Ryans. I mean, exactly. the reason the Texans are really playing great football, their head coach and C.J. Stroud. So I can't wait for this game. As far as the win against the Raiders goes, listen, they took care of business. The Raiders, again, I think are playing well above expectations at this point in time. And I stand by Antonio Pierce should get the job. The Raiders, to me, are the second best example of a team that just feels like, man, if they had a star quarterback or an exciting young quarterback, gosh, this team has got some players. They do. They're playing disciplined football here now. And if the Raiders can find a way to go and get a Caleb Williams, a Drake May, a Michael Penix, someone who they can build around, they could turn this thing around quickly.
They could. I really think that Vegas has a lot in the makes. Now, that unfortunately for them, they're in a division with so much talent around them as well.
But the Chargers
they are going to need other things to fall in their favor.
But, I'm with you.
But yeah, no, it's this will be an interesting game between the Colts and the Texans. Very excited for that one. And yeah, I mean, to your point, I had them, I think, both as 6-win teams. I think you had them both also in the bottom of the AFC South, and here they are in contention for winning that division. It's crazy. So kudos to them. And the big difference, quarterback play, yes, of course, especially when it comes to CJ Stroud. But as you mentioned, it's the head coaches have You just don't know when you're making predictions what you're going to get out of rookie head coach. You don't know enough about them as a
They
fan.
nailed it.
The teams don't even know enough about them, but both are clearly panning out to be pretty solid hires there. The Los Angeles Rams go on the road to the New York Giants. Almost lose this one too,
Whew.
but the Rams get the win, improve to 9-7, give themselves a playoff shot here, and put themselves in the picture. 26-25, the victory there for the Rams. And you called this team, being a playoff team this year, and so got to give kudos to you for that one. I had them being one of the worst teams in the league, but they are very much right now in the playoffs as we speak, and that's a kudos to Matt Stafford, what he's been able to do.
Yeah.
Obviously, these rookies have been playing well above what you would expect, and Puka Nacua continues to amaze. He is on the precipice of setting every rookie receiver record this upcoming week. So, yeah, they've got a lot of weapons, and I think the Rams would be one of those teams you'd really be scared to see them in the postseason.
They are the Browns of the AFC. The Browns and the Rams are the AFC and NFC teams right now that every division winner is going bleep. Like you don't want that matchup. They're beatable. They are beatable. They've been beaten. They've had games where they don't play well, and they'll let you in games. Both teams will let you in games. Joe Flacco will make a really weird, costly interception, or the Rams special teams will have a massive breakdown. And Stafford's always liable to throw one ugly pick at some point in time. But they are both playing really great football right now. And, again, with the Rams, that I don't want to take too much from it. Like, okay, you let the Giants hang around. Giants have been really scrapping, really fighting, clawing over the last, month and a half. They're not they're a well-coached football team. They have a great head football coach. And for the Rams, it's a tough assignment. You got to travel all the way to the East Coast, bad weather, and you coming off a gigantic win. So I don't want they took, again, win was a win for them. I don't want to overthink it. If I'm the Rams, I think you are locked in at the 6th seed. I'm pretty sure. The only way that it would be, I think, if the Packers win and the Rams lose, then the Rams could fall to the 7th seed and they'd have to go to Dallas if things like that could shake out. So I don't know what you do if you're the Rams. Do you just say to yourself, bleep it? I don't want to get any of our guys hurt against a physical Niners team that's even going to be resting their starters. And it's going to be the game that both teams just don't care about trying to win. Or if you're the Rams, you go out there and you say, we want Detroit. And you just you shoot your shot. And because you're not going to go to the 5th seed, the highest you can go is the 6th seed. And you say, shoot your shot. We want Detroit. It's going to be an interesting thing for the Rams to have to figure out. And either way, the Rams could very well end up in an NFC Championship game. I don't think it's crazy to say that.
Well, they have the coach and the experienced quarterback to do it. So that's, those are two of the check marks that you look for, the first two, when you're talking about a championship caliber team. So, yeah, if they, pull off, a first round win, if they are the 6th seed, all of a sudden, with one win behind them, you start to feel a little bit more like, could this team make themselves a run? Yeah, they're an interesting watch in the playoffs. I think the Browns is a good comp. Like both those teams, I think everyone in the NFL is really intrigued to see how they perform in the postseason. The Cardinals pull off yet another upset, a big upset here, biggest one of the weekend, no doubt, over the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles now are just dropping games like flies left and right. They have now lost 5 of their last 6 games.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, 4 of their last 5 games. And, they get a road game against the Giants next week, which divisional games often can go either way. We could be talking about the Eagles being 11-6, which is almost impressive to say that the Eagles could lose 5 of their last 6 games and be 11-6. Like, so at the end of the day, it's almost like, well, it could be so much worse for Philadelphia, but they have done themselves no favors. They had the 1 seed much earlier in the year. They had the division, and now they're looking at a wild card. So they definitely have dropped themselves out of favor, but they're still in a good position in terms of their record. They just kind of need to figure things out, though. And in that regard, they are in a little bit of a troubling spot as a team overall. Offensively, they're not figuring things out. And despite one game being okay from the defensive effort once they switched play calling duty to Matt Patricia, the defense has been a massive liability for the Eagles as of late. And to give up 37 points to the Arizona Cardinals, 35 points to the Arizona Cardinals was another, warning sign that come playoff time, they're going to be playing a lot of really good offenses. Do they actually, now that we look at it, have the capability to go toe to toe with not only the league's best offenses, but on the flip side, is their defense going to be able to, or are they going to be able to put up points against some of these good defenses too?
Listen, the Eagles are, I mean, you said it could be worse. I don't think it could be worse. I think they are in absolute tailspin, bottom falling out. They need to play their starters, and they need to try to win this game against the Giants, and they just need to go all out. I mean, like they're a team that just feels like it's, like I said on Friday.
What is the argument for resting the starters? You have a shot at the division still.
Yeah.
Why would you ever?
I don't think they're not going to rest this. I don't think they're going to rest starters, but I'm just saying, like,
well, I've seen videos though of Eagles fans like, we need to rest our starters next week and get this figured out. I'm like, you fight for the division. Like, it's a no-brainer.
And just reset. Well, they could say because they want to go play the NFC South. You get to go play the NFC South winner.
Yeah, but I mean, that's always a dicey proposition. You got to go on the road then.
True. I'll say this. I think let's just be honest. That was a disaster of a game for the Eagles. Disaster.
It's bad.
And their special teams not good. Offensively, they were just outgained. I think the first downs was almost like 2-1. Like, Cardinals to Eagles. I mean, it was bad. I mean, it's really, really bad. And defensively, this Cardinals offense is not great. Like, they're a work in progress. They have some nice pieces. James Conner's a fine back, but like, listen, this is a Bears team that just beat this Cardinals team, and now you're looking at an Eagles team that it just is ugly, really ugly. And I was the biggest proponent of the Eagles, weeks 1 through 10, and I had them number 1 in the power rankings. I was flexing after they beat the Chiefs, and I really thought they were flying high, and they were. I mean, they're winning games, but this is starting to feel like that Pittsburgh team that was 11-0 and ended up 12-4. What did they ended up being, like 11-6 going to the playoffs or something like that, 11-5, and it's just I have no faith in them, no faith, and in order for me to have any sort of faith in them going to the playoffs, I need to see a really, really great performance week 18 against the Giants.
Yeah, I think they need to play that game for multiple reasons, to fight for the division, all of that, but they needed to get some positive vibes going throughout that team in that locker room. You got to capture some sort of momentum. It's really tough to be a really good team for the majority of the year and then fall off and just be, stumbling into the postseason. That's never a good thing for whatever you want to call it, just like the mojo or the vibes of the team going into that environment with everything on the line. You don't want to recapture stuff in the postseason. You want to already have it going into it. And so that's going to be a big thing for the Eagles moving forward. Meanwhile, the Saints insert a bunch of anarchy into the equation with a big win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
That was crazy.
By 10, 23-13. And now we've got ourselves a dogfight. It's going to be extremely interesting to see how this thing plays out with the Saints, the Falcons, and the Bucs.
Now the Bucs still control their own. They control their own destiny.
They do. The Bucs still control their own destiny. So that game was of the least consequence to them. But the Saints really put themselves now in a position where all they need is a win and a Bucs loss. And, the Saints then capture the division title. We already talked about the Falcons needing not only to win, but they would also need both of those teams to lose, and then some other, circumstances to arise. So yeah, there's definitely a much better possibility for the Buccaneers to take this division, but the Saints very firmly in play as well. So I thought that was a huge game for New Orleans. They needed that for many reasons, but both teams sit at 500 right now. If my money was on it, I would say it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as your NFC South champions come
Yeah.
next week. But the Bucks play the Panthers, so that's a pretty good omen there for Tampa Bay, as the Panthers have 2 wins on the season, and it's the Falcons and the Saints really vying for that positioning there. So if the Falcons win, they get the Saints out of their way and jump them,
Yeah.
and then they just need the Buccaneers to lose. So
What's
pretty
weird about
clear
it is
scenarios here.
Yeah, what's weird about it is basically there will be no NFC South wild card. Like they can't basically make the wild card like at all. It's just whoever wins the division. The Falcons can win the division with a win and a Bucks loss. But again, that would just be that it's a lot. So the winner of the Falcons versus Saints is obviously going to be rooting for the Panthers. I think it's clean. I'll say this about the game. I was shocked. I mean, the Bucks had a chance. I thought if you like, I had this murderer's row in my head on Friday going, oh my God, CJ Beathard starting. It's going to be the Panthers are going to beat the Jags, and then the Bucks are going to beat the Saints, and the Bucks are going to rest all their starters, and the Panthers are going to beat the Bucks. Then the Panthers are going to end up with 4 wins, and the Bears are going to lose the first overall pick, right? Like that was what it was going through my head on Friday. And so God bless that the Saints in a way for playing part of like helping me avoid that, because now the Panthers game matters to the Bucks. Right now it ended up not mattering. The Panthers lost and all is well for me. But I do think you're going to see a really motivated Bucks team come out, because that was so uncharacteristic. They were playing such good football. They were at home, and I think this was a Saints team you just saw like they threw everything at the kitchen sink. Which means it's not going to surprise me at all if the Falcons beat the Saints, this week. Because it just felt like that was an empty the tank game for the Saints. And I don't know if they can do it again. And I don't know if it matters, because I think the Bucks knew they had to win one of these last 2. And now the pressure's on. I think you're going to see a Bucks team play really good football this week. But kudos to the Saints. This is what would drive you crazy if you're a Saints fan, is if you just got consistent quarterback play all year, you would have ran away with this division. You really would have. Like, they are a talented team. Your coach is not good. You need to fire your coach. But if you had gotten consistent quarterback play, this is a team that should have locked up this division, should have been a 10-win team, and we shouldn't even be talking about this.
Yeah, the Bucks were just waiting in the wings and kind of just coasting this last month and a half, slowly sneaking up on them, and then there you go. Now the Bucks are in prime position. 49ers lock up the 1 seed in the NFC with a 27-10 victory over the Commanders. The Commanders are, a total mess, and so they're 4-12 right now. The 49ers have, I don't know if it's too strong of a statement to say recaptured, the magic that they've had, but they are playing really well. They obviously rebounded. Brock Purdy did, especially from a brutal game the week before, and so 49ers put themselves back on top. They lock themselves up that bye. Are in great positioning. I do feel truthfully, and we'll get to the Ravens game coming up, that the 2 1 seeds are far and away the 2 best teams in the NFL. And to me, it's not really close in either way. And so from that respect, I think football justice has kind of been delivered in some regards this year. It's not always that case. Sometimes 1 seeds, I feel, get lucky or what have you, but in this case, I think we do have the 2 best teams and the most likely Super Bowl matchup as well.
Yeah, listen. They Niners, they needed that, right? They came out and they used the Washington as a get right game, of stat padding game. Hey, get your mojo back game a bit. And I also think it helps for the Niners the way the Ravens won against the Dolphins. We'll talk about that coming up in a second. Right now, it just looks like the Ravens are an absolute juggernaut, and they are on an extremely hot streak. We know how the season ebbs and flows. Like the Niners had a 3-game losing streak, then a 4-game, which like the Niners were the juggernaut. Now they're trying to fight it back. So are the Ravens peaking too early? Maybe you can make that argument, right? So if you are the Niners, I think, and you're a fan of the Niners and you think the Niners can win the Super Bowl, they absolutely can still win the Super Bowl. The playoffs and the Super Bowl is a different game than a regular season, primetime game even. I will say for the Niners, one of the things that did still concern me a bit, even from this watching this game, is that I really believe that they need to find ways to also just score with like an over-the-top big play, right? The one thing that concerned me with the Ravens and the Dolphins was like, oh, well, the Dolphins can go over the top, right? If they need to. They can hit that long play to Tyreek Hill if they need to. I still don't know if the Niners, when push comes to shove, can just drop back and gun it to Deebo Samuel because he just beat a guy off the line and it's a 50-yard bomb. And I know the Ravens can do that, right? And I know that they can score quick if they have to without having to make a bunch of people miss tackles. Now, maybe the Niners don't need to do it, but the Ravens gang tackled the crap out of them last week. We saw it. So
Yeah.
That would be my concern. Is like I still am waiting for that, just like the Niners to show that level of their offense, or go back to where is the run game with McCaffrey? The run game has been great the last year and a half with McCaffrey, but it's been different than it was in the first iteration of the Kyle Shanahan. I think the Kyle Shanahan era is in two parts right now: pre-McCaffrey, post-McCaffrey. And in the pre-McCaffrey Shanahan, they had Raheem Mostert. They were just throwing any dude out there, and it's just like, God damn, they're physical. They're just going to beat the crap out of you. The run game doesn't feel like that as much anymore. It feels like, McCaffrey is just going to get his yards because he's Christian McCaffrey. Not so much like, dude, I could run. I could be 100-yard rusher for the Niners. So that concerns me a little bit as well. It's just finding that unique or new identity for the Niners. They're a great team. That's how picky I have to be right now in talking about the Niners. And for Washington, really quick, I think this has been a really unique experiment with Sam Howell. I think Sam Howell deserves to be a quarterback in the NFL. Maybe not a starter. Maybe he is the new spot starter guy that you want, for your team for that 3 or 4 week run. It feels like he's got that energy. But I think Washington also knows, like, this has been good for them. Like, let's lose out and let's completely reset. I picked Washington to win 2 games, going up with 4 games, but they ended up in the same spot I said they need to be in. Reset. Like, blow this thing up and reset. And they're doing that, and I think that's the right thing for them.
Yeah, last thought on the 49ers. I think this win was welcome in many ways, but to lock up that 1 seed to make it so that you can rest Christian McCaffrey next week, who is dealing with a calf strain, that's huge. I think that's really big. And
I'd rest everyone
to chill.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Trent Williams. Absolutely. I mean, they have a lot of guys that are veteran dudes who could use it, and I don't worry about the Niners with the rest versus rust because they're not a young team. A lot of these guys have been there, done that, right? And Shanahan is going to make sure that Purdy's prepared, even though he is a young player.
The Jacksonville Jaguars shut out the Carolina Panthers.
God, what a win.
So much so that, as you alluded to earlier in the episode, Panthers owner David Tepper was seen throwing a drink at the Jaguars fans in the stadiums from his box. So, yeah, we'll wait to see on what consequences come his way. But nonetheless, he's worth $20.5 billion. So whatever the fine is, it will be a drop in the bucket for Mr. David Tepper. But nonetheless, Jacksonville gets the win it needed. It's been kind of a rough go this season. Obviously, they've performed below expectations, especially offensively.
Totally.
Trevor Lawrence has been dealing with injuries all season long, and this one he did not start. He misses his first start in his career, in his football career. He didn't miss a game in high school, college, or the pros up until this point, but just wasn't a go, and it turned out to be the right move as they get the win nonetheless. We'll see if he returns this next week here as they need another win to solidify their AFC South crown. Just a lot on the line here for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and yeah, he'll end up being the starter so that they can ensure that they get the win and lock up that division. But nonetheless, it was a convincing win for Jacksonville, one they needed, and I don't know, maybe a week off and really 2 weeks, because I imagine maybe Trevor will be a little bit limited this week in practice as well. Maybe this kind of reset for him is what this team needs to get that surge and push beyond what they've been able to produce thus far this year.
Yeah, the Jacksonville Jaguars, again, it seems a lot like the Bills. They've put themselves still in a position, even though they've had such an up and down year, a workable schedule, and they've just been really high and really, really low. But they put themselves in positions to where everything that they want to accomplish is in front of them. The AFC South title for 2 years in a row, playoff, chance to win multiple playoff games. It's in front of them. I think if you're Jacksonville, you have to start Trevor he is going to give you the only chance you have to actually win in the playoffs. So you got to get him back mobile, working in the flow of the offense and get a win against the rival in Tennessee. They're not going to make it easy. Tennessee is not going to make it easy. They're going to want to beat the crap out of the Jags, and Mike Vrabel will have his dudes ready. I will say this in the game overall. To me, the takeaway was like Carolina, man. Like this team, I don't. The Lions were 0-16, and I remember watching that.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the number 1 overall pick. Like they didn't have this Panthers team might be the most depressing, bad football team I can remember in a long, long time, Dan. Like maybe since like Jamarcus Russell Raiders, where it's just like, what do you do? Like he looked small. He looked inaccurate at times against Jacksonville's defense. Is not great, and they're not been playing great recently. And I know he's got no one, but again, they don't have the picks now. They don't have. Remember, the Bears get the second pick from Jacksonville next year too. Like they gave up a lot to get Bryce Young, and it has been an utter disaster. I mean, you're in that area. What are the vibes? Like, what is the feeling in that area right now? Because I'm telling you what, like it's to the point where I'm like. I don't know what they do. I really don't.
No, they're in a position where they have to go all in with Bryce Young because there's just no other. They have no choice. And the fact that they, have an owner that continues to just fire coaches, they've created an environment of instability to where getting a quality coach is going to be harder and harder the more the firings happen.
And you got owner throwing drinks on people. Like who's going to want to work with that?
Who wants to be the only thing at this point that they have going for them is they're in a bad division and they're in a nice part of the country. I mean, that's really the only things that a coach might be enticed by. But other than that, I mean, like you said, I mean, this thing's got bare bones. They got some nice players, J.C. Horn, Brian Burns. Derek Brown and Bryce Young, hopefully, can become a starting quality quarterback in this league. So you don't know that. Like those are encouraging things, but they're just in a terrible, terrible place. And the horizon, to your point, doesn't seem to be much better. It doesn't seem like the lights at the end of the tunnel. It seems like it's forever down the tunnel because of these next 2 years of low capital and just where you're headed. Where are you going?
If the Carolina Panthers still had their pick, right? If they had somehow just, let's say they had ended the season last year, they drafted Bryce Young number 1 overall, or even, they drafted him at 6 or whatever, right? It would be a no-brainer. They're taking Caleb Williams. Like it'd be a no-brainer. They're taking Caleb Williams, even though they just drafted Bryce Young. No-brainer. And that is what is so wild to me. I mean, this is a kid who won the Heisman Trophy, who I think he won a national championship. Yeah. And I mean, it's bad. It's really, really bad. And there's not much more that we could say than the truth is it's the same thing we said before the draft. He's small. His accuracy isn't translating, and they do not have nearly enough help around him. And now the owner is making it to the point where it's like, why would you even want to go there if you're a player? If I was an agent and I'd be like, dude, you don't want to. We're not signing in Carolina. Like that is what he did with throwing the drink is one of those things where I don't want to seem like I'm appalled. Like, but it is one of those things. It's so unbelievable that happened. That I'm like, this dude is that hot-headed and incompetent, and you makes you wonder how he earned his money anyway. So you're like, what is dude, this is not cutthroat, but you're not on billions, bro. Like you are an NFL owner. You have to show a level of dignity and class. Even Jerry Jones, who goes on the radio once a week and talks way too much, I mean, it would never do anything to embarrass his team like this. I mean, and that's what he's doing. I mean, it is, if I'm a coach, I don't want to coach there. If I'm a player, I don't want to go there. And no matter what, if you're a player, you're a wide receiver, you go there, you got to work with a kid. And if he's not good, they're not moving off of him. Like, you're stuck with him throwing you the ball. Like, everything is just, it's not good in Carolina. And I think it leads to sooner rather than later, like, they're drafting a quarterback in the 2025 draft in the first round. And that, like, they have to reset.
They will have to reset, and I mean, who knows, man? The NFL might push Tepper out, like they did with Dan Snyder, and that might be a problem because that'll set a precedent, for being able to push an owner out.
The precedent
because
is
you don't really
don't throw drinks on people. Like,
well, yeah. No, I mean, obviously that's terrible.
He's hurting the league,
but
right?
It's
Like,
nothing
I could argue, if I'm the other owners, like, this dude is actively hurting our value. He's hurting the league.
Yeah. No, it's true. That's very true. Tough situation, tough state for the Carolina Panthers. Tough state right now for the Miami Dolphins, despite them locking up a playoff spot. They get absolutely trounced by the Baltimore Ravens, 56-19. What an absolute just dominating effort by Baltimore here.
At least
and
you can
a
say
lot
they
of people
were
are talking about it.
They can at least say, hey, we were on the road.
That's true. That's true.
San Francisco wasn't home. We were on the road.
That's true. And I'm trying to think of, like, what else the Dolphins could take away. There's nothing.
No. Yeah.
The only thing they could take away is that, we didn't have Raheem Mostert and Waddle. But even then, I mean, you lost by 30.
You gave up a perfect
points.
passer rating. You lost Nick Chubb. He tore his ACL. I mean, it's doom and gloom.
Bradley Chubb. Yeah.
Bradley Chubb, sorry. Yeah, Nick Chubb also tore it. He didn't tear his ACL. It was the other ligaments. But listen, from the only thing to take away from this game is I'm glad Lamar had a chance to have a stat pad game to help, because so many people I was already hearing the stupid arguments like, who's going to be the worst statistical MVP since, like, the 80s, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, who gives if you're looking at stats in that way, like, you don't get it. Lamar has been the MVP this year. He's the only one of the he's the only one of the star quarterbacks who has put the cape on at times and led his team to victories, and convincing victories against good teams. And his bad games and bad losses were in division, which we all know divisional games are different. Look at that Bills Patriots game. Like, division games are different. Now, conference games, no, you have no excuse. Like, I don't care. It's a conference matchup. You gotta beat them like you would in a non-conference. And his record against the NFC alone should show you why he's the MVP. When dudes aren't prepared for him, they cannot handle him. They just cannot. And I'm happy for Lamar. I'm happy for the Ravens. They're a juggernaut. Now, they're the only team in first class of the Super Bowl playing this morning. You know what I mean? Like,
I think they're the best. They're by far the best team in the NFL.
They're the only team. And it doesn't mean that they can't get upset in the Super Bowl. Of course they could. Lamar has not consistently shown it in the playoffs. They could get upset in the playoffs, but it's going to take a Herculean effort from a Buffalo, a Miami, a Cleveland, a Jacksonville, a Houston, a Colts, a Pittsburgh. It's going to take a Herculean effort from one of those teams to dethrone the Baltimore Ravens. And for Miami, burn the tape. And if you're Josh McDaniels, if you're Mike McDaniel, certainly what you got to do this week is you just got to try to make the guys laugh, and you got to try to be yourself and just say, "We're at home. Let's turn the heaters on, and let's beat the Buffalo Bills. And we're going to be at home. And the next time we'd have to play those guys, we'd have to go back there. We know what to expect. Like, you know what I mean? We'll be better. Like, you could try to sell it in that way, but this is a must win for Miami. Like, I know it's stupid because then it's like, they make the playoffs anyways. No. Culture wise for the Miami Dolphins, and I get it. If you ask Miami fans, like, dude, you're in the playoffs like back-to-back years. You got a good young head coach. Like, the vibes are good. They'd be happy with it because Miami's been a downtrodden franchise since Dan Marino retired. But it's just one of those that just feels like, honestly, Dan, it feels like culturally wise, if you can't beat Buffalo at home, and Tua doesn't play well, like you got to start maybe looking in the mirror going like, we love our coach, we love our culture, we love a lot of the players around our team. This is a lot. This is a big week for Tua. Big week for Tua.
Yeah,
He
it's
was
a
not good against the Ravens. He was
do
not
or
good.
die.
He was
No, it
not
was
good.
terrible. It's terrible. And the thing is, like, the Ravens do have the best defense in the
Yeah.
AFC for sure, and probably the best defense in the NFL. All things said,
Yeah.
um, but for Tua, I mean, the Chiefs have a very good defense. The Browns have a very good defense. The
Yeah.
Ravens have an excellent
He's
defense.
going against good
The
defenses.
they're going to end up playing. I mean, maybe not in the first round,
Yeah.
but after
Eventually.
that, they're going to be playing a good defense.
And Dan, let me ask you this.
tough.
Like, you look at what has the Ravens done the last 2 weeks, right? The MVP and good players. The Ravens have a good roster, really good roster. It's not, I would argue it's not as good of a roster as the Niners. Some would argue it's just as good as the Dolphins. It's splitting hairs. So that what's the difference? All three coaches we really like. Super Bowl for John Harbaugh, been to a Super Bowl for Shanahan, and we know he's good. And Mike McDaniels is a whiz kid. He's great. We love him. We love his press conference stuff. Like, we believe in all three. What's the difference? Lamar Jackson. Like, we've said it over and over and over again. If you draft a Bryce Young, if you have a Kenny Pickett, the best you can do is get a great head coach, surround him with the best rosters, and you can compete for a title. But if one of the legit 5 or 6 star quarterbacks on this planet is humming and their roster is good enough, then that's the way the NFL works, right? Like, and Mahomes, his problem this year right now is his roster is not good enough, right? That's his struggle. And with Josh Allen, his roster is just not good enough at times, and I don't think his coaching is good enough. His coaching is a full step below those other guys. So he's at a 2-point disadvantage, right? So that what are we seeing late in the season? That's what we're seeing, right? Like that's the difference. I'm not making that up, right?
No, not at all. That is the difference. No question. That's just how the NFL works. I mean, it really is that if you have an MVP caliber quarterback, uh, the possibilities are endless. Your range of outcomes and your options for what you can do with your team become so much bigger and greater. And uh, the worst quarterback you have, the narrower your lane becomes, because with the Kenny Pickett, for instance, you have to have a run first, heavy run approach team with like singled up fantastic athletes on the outside. That's the only way to win the game.
Yep.
And great defense, of course. But with Lamar Jackson, you could be down. Your run game could not be super intact, but his ability, changes that. You can go deep, or you can kill him with yak, because they've just got the ability to extend
Flowers
plays.
is great.
I mean, it's just literally, they've got so many different ways to attack you, and that's dangerous. CJ Stroud made his return for the Texans, and Will Levis's return for the Titans, although he ended up leaving with an injury as well. But the Texans win 26-3 over the Titans.
Yep.
And obviously it was a must win for Houston. They are now, in position to beat the Colts and, get into the playoffs. And so right now, we're looking at an awesome matchup next week in division for those two teams. But the Texans really just doing what they need to do, take care of business. It showed that CJ Stroud was able to, knock off whatever rust may have been there over the last couple weeks without Tank Dell, of course, since he's been out for the season, but still able to lead his team to victory in a 23.1 at that. My money would be on the Texans winning next week. I just think CJ Stroud makes enough of a difference there. But we'll see. I mean, it'll be exciting either way. And then, for the Titans, I'm glad Will Levis started, because he should have gotten more reps and stuff. It was concerning that he got hurt, and kind of a bummer for them. But the season was lost anyways. And so it's kind of a reset year for the Titans. We'll see what they do with Derrick Henry. We'll see if Ryan Tannehill goes elsewhere or becomes a backup for the next few years for Levis. But right now it's kind of the state of two franchises and going in separate directions right now. And the
Yeah.
Texans, hopefully, they've done enough to get themselves into the playoffs this year because they have been a great story.
Yeah, the Titans are just like, they need like 3 A players and like 4 B players. They don't have enough good players. Like you look at the roster and you're just like, they need some dudes. Like they just need some more household names. They need some dudes, and they don't have enough right now. They have a great coach, and I think a young quarterback that's got a lot of potential, who deserves a chance to start next year. For the Texans, absolutely. I'm so glad they won this game. I'm so glad it's set up Texans versus Colts. I personally am rooting for the Texans. I want to see this kid get in. I want to see CJ Stroud get in. I want to see what he can do, make all the veterans nervous. If you're a Josh Allen, if you're a Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence, right? You don't want to lose to the rookie like that. And this kid is fearless, and he is fantastic. And he is, I will make the statement too. He is a very unique African-American quarterback. Like he is a pure pocket passer with really good mobility. But I mean, he's Randall Cunningham, man. I mean, in our generation, we haven't seen this this guy before, right? You could argue Mahomes, yes, but Mahomes is just so different too. I just don't think we've ever seen Mahomes before in its own way. Like CJ Stroud, he's Randall Cunningham, man. He's Warren Moon. I mean, he is reading in the pocket, big arm, accurate. And it's special to watch. It's special to see. I love
Cunningham has some wheels on him. But
well, yeah, and CJ does too. You know what I mean? But CJ does too. I mean, Warren Moon's the better comparison. But like, it's just, it's fun to watch, and the Texans become a really fun story. And I'm rooting for them. I hope they get in. I'll betting them. I'm going to root for them. Colts are fun, but getting that kid in, a star, he's a future star for the NFL, and they need to use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
NFL rigged that game. Don't do my Lions dirty.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I'd be very excited to see the Houston Texans in the postseason this year and see what CJ Stroud could do. Imagine if he wins 1 or even 2 games, gets to the AFC Championship his rookie year. That'd be just bonkers considering where the Houston Texans were just a calendar year ago. Pretty wild.
They should have had the number 1 pick.
Yeah, they should have. And thankfully they didn't because, obviously CJ Stroud was the way to go at quarterback.
Yeah.
The Pittsburgh Steelers win on the road at Seattle in a game where both teams needed it to keep themselves afloat in the postseason race. And for the second straight week, Mason Rudolph helped deliver a winning performance for Pittsburgh. Not only a winning performance, but a 30-point performance for the second straight week. So this has now led Mike Tomlin to making the call that even though Kenny looks like he will be healthy going into this week, they are going to ride it out with Mason Rudolph. And so that answers the question of who would win that battle currently. So I think if that's the situation they're in this week, Mark, if they get to the playoffs, which
Rudolph,
it definitely seems like they're going to stay with Mason Rudolph. And, they've got a good shot at winning this week because they play Baltimore, and Baltimore now has nothing to play for. So they are probably going to sit most of their starters, which increases the Steelers' chance of winning. But they do need their easiest path would be for the Bills to lose to the Dolphins, and then the Steelers are in if they win. If they don't, then they would need Jacksonville to lose, which doesn't seem terribly likely. And then, there's a couple other scenarios in there as well. But I really thought this with the story of this game was just the Steelers' offensive line and run game has, they've kind of forged their identity in the last few weeks.
Yeah,
of we're going to pound the rock
great.
and just, and Jalen Warren had some awesome, like big plays out of it. So they're kind of humming when it comes to the run game. And that's the type of performance that obviously can help you in the playoffs, being able to control the line of scrimmage. And then on top of it, they were still able to utilize George Pickens with his second 100-plus yard performance. And Mason Rudolph, just the biggest difference is he stays in the pocket and throws, waits for pressure and delivers, accurate strikes. It's what we didn't see from Mason or from Mitch. and we didn't see it from Kenny either. They bailed pockets early and got happy feet. So that's the biggest difference we're seeing from Mason Rudolph. I'm encouraged by that. Still stinks that they've put themselves in the position by losing to those two-win teams a few weeks ago. So they're going to need some help. But yeah, I thought what this said for Seattle was they've got great weapons. Geno is probably not even long-term answer. I don't think anyone thought he was the long-term answer, but I don't really think Geno's the 3-year answer moving
No,
forward.
and
Like, I think
remember
they
that
need to
deal was
start
like basically
moving
this year's guaranteed and next year,
and next year. Yeah. So I mean, it's becoming more clear that next
it was a
year will
bad loss for
probably be a
Seattle.
bridge year.
Yeah.
Yeah, brutal loss for them. Defensively, they were terrible. And then for Pittsburgh, it's just, okay, you're going to just have to fight and find this same, rhythm next week. Do what you
Yeah.
can to control. Mike Tomlin now extends his non-losing,
It's impressive.
seasons to 17 straight non-losing seasons. And there we are. Honestly, I don't think there's too much to say about this game because both teams are kind of in the middle of the road, and Pittsburgh is just starting to get some momentum going and feel like they found their quarterback a little bit too late in the season, but things are working right now, and so we'll just leave it at that.
The thing I will just add is that Seattle, it's a really bad loss. Now Seattle can still get in. They got to beat Arizona and have a couple things break their way. But yeah, if you're Seattle, that's the kind of loss. You're at home against a team that has been struggling up and down as of late, is on their third quarterback, and defensively you just got embarrassed, and offensively you were pretty inept. And the Steelers got a good defense, but it was ugly. It was one of those where you're like, yeah, we need to make some real changes here in Seattle. And if you're Pittsburgh, I'll say this. Mason Rudolph has a chance here now. He's got a real chance to give himself to earn the job, maybe going into next year, or earn the hey, we're going into a competition. But if I was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I think this is the signal of Mike Tomlin's not going anywhere. Let's give him another quarterback. Maybe it's Kirk Cousins, maybe it's a Band-Aid, or maybe it's a no. We need to go be aggressive in the draft. I think Pittsburgh's going to be one of the fascinating off seasons to look at, because they clearly, when their offense is humming, when you can get the ball to George Pickens, I mean, it opens everything up. And if you have a quarterback who could do that consistently, this Pittsburgh team looked pretty damn hard to beat.
Yeah, they look good. It was very weird and surprising that last 2 weeks to see them put up 30 points when they hadn't done that all year, and then only did it once in all of last year. So, it's very, very weird feeling right now to be a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, because I just don't know how to react to what's gone on. I still don't know if they could really make waves in the playoffs, but I mean, I think if they played like they played the last 2 weeks, they could win a playoff game
On a 3-game
game
win streak. Why not stay hot? You might end up in a Buffalo, right? And they'd be riding high, but you'd have a chance.
And I mean, they're doing this with Miles Jack, who was a plumber a month ago, as their number one middle linebacker, and then a 2 practice squad safeties because Minkah Fitzpatrick's out. Like they've really had to band-aid their entire defense. So if they get Minkah back and get a little bit healthier at linebacker, maybe they'll look good come postseason time if they're fortunate enough to get there. All right, let's rifle through these last matchups here. The Broncos beat the Chargers. Nothing really on the line here as both teams have been eliminated. Broncos go win 16-9 with Jarrett Stidham at quarterback there. So I think we've seen the end of Russell Wilson in a Broncos uniform. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think Stidham has another chance this week to just once again say, hey, if I can play well enough in Sean Payton's system, maybe they just save money and I get to start all next year. Sean's not going anywhere, right? So now Sean's won the war, right? He lost maybe some battles early on, but he's won the war. It's his team. So I think he's got enough leash now to where if he wants to start Stidham next year, if they have to financially, he'd be comfortable with that. And Stidham, I thought, played okay. It's just it's not the long-term answer. Both these teams got a lot of work to do in the offseason.
Was there a bigger sigh of relief than Kansas City pulling out the win over
No,
the Bengals?
huge,
If they
huge.
lost that game,
Yeah.
that would have been almost disaster for the Chiefs to go to 9-7, um, and really push themselves, further down the line in the AFC standings. But they get a win over Cincinnati, and the Bengals were, uh, somewhat of a Cinderella story. Probably comes to an end there. But the Chiefs moved to 10-6 and 25-17. This was almost a situation where, hey, I mean, we just got the win. We survived. And all things said and done, with how sloppy the year's been and how weird, the Kansas City Chiefs are the 3 seed in the AFC. I mean, it's it's not the worst thing ever to happen to
No.
Kansas City, but it is unfamiliar territory for them nonetheless, since they will for sure be playing their first road playoff game with Patrick Mahomes. But yeah,
If
you
they
win the
win, yeah.
game,
If they win their first game.
right, yeah, exactly. So they'll have obviously their division locked up at this point, and we'll see if they make it to a road playoff game in the divisional game. But nonetheless, were there any major takeaways for you out of this game other than Rashee Rice may
Yeah.
finally
They threw a
be
deep
the
bomb.
true number one receiver?
Well,
Yeah,
I think he's going to be a
finally
really great
got it.
number 2 for them eventually. But they did. They hit a deep bomb. I said it on the show. I was like, when's the last time you saw them just step back, 5-step drop,
Launched
one
it.
guy beats another guy and launch it? And so, yeah, it was a great get-right game for them. They did exactly what the Eagles needed to do, and the Eagles didn't. And they pulled it off. So, listen, vibes are certainly better for Kansas City. They're never out of it. Andy Reid and Mahomes, best quarterback-coach combo in the NFL. And Travis Kelce can still get it done at times. I think if you're Kansas City, you should probably smartly, selectively sit some people. You're playing against a Chargers team on the road. I think it would be smart of them to maybe give guys like a Kelce, some, hey, dress, everyone's starting, and then midway through the first, depending on how the games go, slowly start pulling people here or there. You're not going to get the 4 seed. Even if you lose and Jacksonville wins, I think now wait a minute. Can they fall to the 3? No, they're locked in at the 3. So if you are Kansas City, I would selectively sit some people, and health at this point now is the most important thing for them going forward.
Yeah, they need to absolutely be healthy come playoff time, because they can't afford injuries like some other teams with greater depth. Kansas City obviously needs Mahomes, but they can't afford an injury in that receiver core for sure, and offensive line and defensive line. So yeah, Pacheco also another big game. He's the heartbeat of this team right now. I'm telling
great.
you, like
they need to keep it going.
They go as Isaiah Pacheco goes. If
I
he
would
has a
sit
bad
him.
game, the Chiefs are losing.
I would sit him week 18.
Yep, I would too. The Packers, I don't know how you feel about Jordan Love. He's obviously had slowed down tremendously.
I was so happy they won
the beginning of this year.
So
but they
happy.
won 33-10, and Love throws 3 touchdowns. Aaron Jones has a big day.
Third coming.
Yeah, exactly. So, the Packers are very much on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoff standings. But they're at the 7 seed right now. I just feel, somehow they have a 60% chance of making the playoffs. It doesn't feel that way, but I mean, that's what it is. That's what they're at right now, and
they control their destiny. They control their destiny for the 7 seed. They win, and they're in. If the Bears win, the Packers can still make it, but a lot of things kind of have to go their way, and they're possible, but it'd be a lot of work. I will say this. Listen, my dream now is for the Bears to just demolish the Packers on Sunday. And
wait, do the Bears not have tiebreakers over any of those other teams? They must not.
No, the Bears are out.
Because if the Bears go to 8-9 and all of these other teams go to 8-9, I guess the Bears don't have a tiebreaker over Seattle.
They
New Orleans,
don't. They are out. The Bears
Minnesota.
are out. So the way it works, so I'm going through the playoff machine right now on ESPN, and I'm gonna pick the favorites here. And if you roll it out the way we think it will work out, right, then the Green Bay Packers, if they lose, and Seattle beats Arizona, then Seattle is in. Now, if Arizona wins over Seattle at home and the Packers lose and the New Orleans Saints win, then the Saints can get in as a wild card, right? But
That's
if the Falcons beat the Saints, the Packers can lose and get in if the Arizona Cardinals also beat the Seattle Seahawks. So there is a path for the Packers to get in. They control their destiny because they win, they're in. And if they lose, they can get in at the Cardinals and the Falcons. They're rooting for the birds. I want the Bears to destroy the living hell out of the Packers. I can't wait for this game. Yeah. I'll say this. The Vikings defense turned back into a pumpkin. They've been playing really good football. And shout out to now I just lost his name, the defensive coordinator, Brian Flores.
Yeah.
He's really done some special stuff with that Vikings defense during this run where they've needed the defense because the offense has just been brutal post the Dobbs magical 2-game run, right? So I think this was just that the clock struck midnight on the Vikings defense, and the Packers own the division. They play well in division. They always play well against the Bears, the Lions, and the Vikings. They just own it. And LaFleur has his go-to game plans of how to make Jordan Love look good, and he looked good in prime time. I got to give him his flowers. He looked good. I cannot wait. For Sunday.
That'd be a great game.
I just can't wait. And part of me hopes the Cardinals win, the Bears win, and the Falcons win, so the Packers can get in at 8-9 then as the 7th seed and go to Dallas and just get destroyed. I will wear a Dak Prescott jersey. I will wear a Cowboys hat. I will be officially changing my Twitter bio to Cowboys #1 fan during that game. And I will just love to watch Jordan Love get blown out in week 18 at home against the Bears and then get blown out in the wild card against the Cowboys. That would be my dream scenario for the next 2 weeks. That's my Super Bowl, my personal Super Bowl. We've already won the #1 pick. So it's my personal Super Bowl. I just say, to me, the only takeaway from that game was I don't need to see any more of Jaron Hall, and the Vikings defense turned back into a pumpkin.
Yeah, yes. Very much a definitive answer on that front with Minnesota. All right, well, that is the full recap from week 17. Week 18 gets going on Saturday. We have 2 games, Steelers, Ravens, Texans, Colts, and the rest of the games are on Sunday, finishing the regular season with Bills at Dolphins for the AFC East crown. So it'll be a very exciting slate, finishing with perhaps the most exciting game of the week as well. And then it's playoff time. Can't believe it. We've made our way here. 17 weeks for each team of NFL football here. Wild stuff. Any closing thoughts, Mark, as we get ready for this one?
No, except for the fact that, again, I just credit to the NFL for the way they schedule these games, because we are in for a real treat. Even though a lot is already locked up, they're giving us still plenty to digest and plenty to watch on the final week 18, and also make a decision with David Tepper and be strong and be swift with it. I don't want to harp on it too much more. I don't want to talk about it more. I just want it to be swift. I know he's a billionaire. Find him a good chunk of money. And honestly, I would take a draft pick. That's what I would do. I would take a draft pick and I'd find him money. And I would, behind closed doors, if I was Goodell, I'd call him and I'd be like, we're dead serious. If that shit happens again, you're not going to have any help from me if these other owners want to try to kick you out of this league. That's Bush League. You need to get your shit together.
Or they could do a sweepstakes where 15 Jaguars fans get to go and throw a drink of their choice in David Tepper's face.
I'd pay pay-per-view money for that.
I would pay for that as well. Absolutely. All right. That's been our look here on the Football Lounge at week 17 and the playoff landscape. Of course, we'll be back next week with plenty more commentary, as we will have a full playoff picture to look forward to and a first week of the playoffs as well. You can check us out on YouTube if that's where you're watching. We appreciate it. Like, subscribe as always. That definitely helps us out. We're out there on social media as well at FB Lounge Pod, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of that good stuff. So please check us out and give us a follow there as well and interact. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you agree with, what you don't, and we'll be happy to respond to those comments as well. But that'll do it for us here on the Football Lounge. For Mark, I'm Dan. We'll see you back here next week.